Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. It's time, once again, for another depressing dose of dismal Disney. Ladies and gentlemen, as I was preparing this video, I had to quite literally stop everything that I was doing because Box Office Pro suddenly published their newest predictions for the domestic opening weekend box office for The Marvels. I had been looking at an article from Deadline that came out on the 7th with its own opening weekend box office predictions for both the domestic and international box office. But the updated numbers from Box Office Pro literally blew that Deadline article out the window. In the most recent projections that I had made a few days ago, they were based on predicted domestic opening weekend box office numbers that Box Office Pro had published on October 26th. And those numbers were a range from $45 million to $67 million, which was a reduction from their earlier predictions that preceded October 15th, in which they were predicting $50 million to $75 million. But on November 2nd, Box Office Pro had revised their predictions to a range of $45 million to $62 million, which was a reduction on the upper end of the range as compared to their previous one of $45 million to $67 million. But as I said, they came out with new predictions today, November 8th, and hold on to your hats, folks, Box Office Pro is now predicting that the domestic opening weekend box office for The Marvels, which opens on Friday, will be somewhere in the range of $35 million to $49 million. I kid you not, and it's a good thing I can pause my recording to recover from the laughing. This is unbelievably bad for Disney and Marvel Studios, because if these numbers turn out to be correct, The Marvels will most definitely earn the title of having the lowest domestic opening weekend box office for the entire MCU franchise, of which The Marvels will be its 33rd movie. Currently, the MCU movie with the lowest domestic opening weekend box office is 2008's The Incredible Hulk, with its $55.4 million, which went on to become the first MCU movie to flop at the box office. And if you saw my previous video that was about this movie, you may recall that I said that the 4 MCU movies that had the lowest domestic opening weekend box office revenue were also all more than one standard deviation away from the franchise average of $135.3 million. And that standard deviation is $68.7 million, which means that one standard deviation below $135.3 million is $66.7 million. So in addition to 2008's The Incredible Hulk being below that are 2015's Ant-Man with its $57.2 million domestic opening weekend box office, as well as 2 movies from 2011, Captain America: The First Avenger and Thor, which earned $65.1 million and $65.7 million respectively. And The Marvels is going to fall well below all of them because its entire updated predicted domestic opening weekend box office range is less than $55.4 million. The midpoint between $35 million to $49 million is $42 million, which is the most likely value to occur within that range. So to project what the movie's final domestic box office could end up being, we'll estimate what the movie's average weekly drops in box office might be by starting with the MCU's overall average weekly drop of 37.66% as the center point, then create a possible range by going one standard deviation above and below the average. And the endpoints for that range are 31.94% and 43.42%. So using the $42 million midpoint as the movie's most likely domestic opening weekend box office, we can project that the movie's final domestic box office will probably fall somewhere within the following range of values: $96.7 million at the low end, $111.4 million at the mid-range, and $131.4 million at the upper end, which is the best that this movie can currently hope for. And guess what? Since 2008's The Incredible Hulk also has the lowest final domestic box office for the entire franchise at $134.8 million, if these numbers hold up, then The Marvels will also end up becoming the lowest grossing movie domestically for the entire MCU franchise. So yes, this movie is a complete disaster for Disney and Marvel Studios, and we haven't even gotten to the final global gross box office projections, which I will now do. And to begin, we'll use the franchise's average domestic share of 41.43% as the midpoint, and one standard deviation above and below to establish a possible range of domestic shares from 34.44% to 48.42%. So applying this range of possible domestic shares to The Marvels yields a possible range of final global gross box office revenue that falls somewhere within the following range: $199.7 million at the low end and $381.5 million at the upper end. So globally, it is now very unlikely that The Marvels will even earn $400 million. But its most likely value might be around $269 million, which is the value obtained by using both the franchise's average weekly drop of 37.66% and the average domestic share of 41.43%. Remember 2008's The Incredible Hulk? Its final global gross box office revenue was $265.6 million, which is only $3.4 million away from the most likely final global gross box office value for The Marvels. So The Marvels now also has the dubious opportunity of becoming the MCU's lowest grossing movie globally for the entire franchise. So now, having projected what the movie's possible final global gross box office numbers might be, let's estimate what the movie's likely break-even point range might be by multiplying the movie's $274.8 million production budget by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively, to account for the 50% of gross ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, as well as the additional costs of marketing the movie and other miscellaneous costs that the studio pays above and beyond the production budget. And when we do that, we get an estimated break-even point range of $687 million to $824.4 million. And the movie's projected final global gross box office numbers are nowhere near these values. So yes, absolutely, The Marvels is going to be a massive box office flop. So much so that it will be the newest contestant in my Who Will Be the Biggest Flop video series, which I will be resuming after this weekend. Because, based on its estimated break-even point range and projected final global gross box office revenue, The Marvels currently stands to lose somewhere between $415.7 million to $624.7 million in global gross box office revenue. And when we divide that range by 2 to account for the 50% that movie theaters keep for themselves from the global gross box office ticket sales, Disney and Marvel Studios may lose somewhere on the order of $207.8 million to $312.3 million. So there is now the possibility that The Marvels could potentially unseat Warner Bros. Discovery's massive flop The Flash as the biggest flop of 2023. But if it doesn't unseat The Flash, then it will more than likely become the second biggest flop of 2023 by surpassing Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction, which currently sits in second place behind The Flash. There is no longer any doubt that The Marvels is going to be a massive disaster for Disney and Marvel Studios. What a huge waste of money and time in producing this movie. This is what Disney deserves for producing total woke garbage that nobody wants to see. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.